This weekend was a crazy one in IFBB Bikini. We had 4 pro shows this weekend. Crazy amount of shows. A lot of opportunities for people to qualify, and we did have some new Olympia qualified athletes. The DC Pro was probably the most exciting out of all the shows this weekend because you had 4 people in that first qual out that were not qualified for the Olympia yet. So it was a battle between Masa, Yulia, Marie, Eve, and Tara, who ended up stamping her ticket to the Olympia. So all 4 of them did not have their qualification. So it was a real throwdown of who is going to get to the Olympia at this one. It was an awesome show. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first off, going into the scorecards, you can see here in the scorecards, Tara won with a perfect score, 3 points on the perfect score for a first place. Then in second place, you had Masa with 6 points, a perfect second place. But in that third place spot, that one was a toss-up. You had Yulia and Marie Eve going at it, and it was a 1-point decision between the two of them. 4 points and 3 points for Yulia, edging out Marie Eve by 1 spot. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it and why that happened here. And let's go ahead and take a look at the pictures. So first off, looking at the pictures and looking at everything in detail, I also saw a video of this show. A whole lot was going on this show. So one of the things that was kind of obvious to everyone at this show was the positioning of the stage. So if you look at all the pictures, there's about, I don't know, 6 times, 5 times where these two in particular, Masa and Tara, were next to each other, and Masa is just taking a little bit. She's taking up a little bit of Tara's space. You know, you could see when she gets into position, she was positioning herself where her arm was kind of covering over Tara's arm, where she was coming back to the line from the walk back. She was taking a step in kind of a half step in front of her and moving over when she had all of this room here. So in the pictures for Tara, you can't really see her physique on display so well. So kudos to the judges for still seeing her physique, even though she was blocked a good majority of the time. I can't imagine trying to judge Tara if I'm a judge over on this side of the panel. You know, being right in front, you could probably see pretty good. Maybe the second judge over, but when you're over here on this as this judge, it's going to be really hard to see her when someone is stepping in front of the line a little bit, just by even a half a step, and then blocking their view of Tara all the way through. So who knows, that could have been a score where they didn't score it as high, but it got thrown out because there's 5 judges usually at a show. The high score and the low score just throws out. So definitely a disadvantage there for Tara because she was blocked. There was kind of nothing she could do. When you look at the positioning, Marie Eve is also blocking her left hand. You have Masa blocking her right hand and fully in her way. What can she do in that positioning? It's going to be really difficult for her. My recommendation is, if that ever happens, is kind of, I would say, make it obvious. Take a step forward where it's even a bigger step forward where you have to get in front of both of them. That might make it more obvious to the judge that you're having a problem, and then the judge can say, hey, everyone, spread out, get back on the line, spread out, get back on the line. Shouldn't be something you have to do. But in that scenario, that would probably be the way to go. Otherwise, you're just going to get sandwiched in between them. It was pretty blatant. It was constant. I don't think Marie Eve was doing anything wrong here. I think that Masa was just taking up a lot of space and moving over in Tara's space here, which kind of led to the kind of crowding on the stage. But if you look at the position, I mean, there's a lot of room here for Masa to take, 6 inches, a full-on foot even, to even out the space where Tara can have her space on the stage. So looking at the physiques, I want to go into a couple of the physiques, and I think this show was really a kind of a battle of the backs is what really told the story. So let's go ahead and take a look at the backs here on the story of this show, because that's really what does separate everyone in this show. But so before we go into that, I do want to go into this video here because I did just talk about how Masa was crowding Tara. So if you can see here in this video, Masa takes a little bit longer to get back to the front of the line. So Tara has already set her feet, and then Masa takes like an extra half second. She's a half second behind her, and then she steps forward and kind of to her left and crowds her. So watch when she steps back. So Tara is set up now. Masa takes an extra half second, and then kind of comes in her way. Marie Eve also comes in Tara's way. So Tara moves over a little bit to the right to try to get out of the way of Marie Eve, But when she does that, at the same time she does that, Masa takes a big step into Tara's space. So Marie Eve's in her space, Tara moves over a little bit, and Masa's moving in her space. So it's like she's kind of stuck there. She's like, what do I do? This is a Tara sandwich with no other toppings besides her. She's just compacted in between those two pieces of bread there. Nothing that she can do there. Now, in that positioning, there should be a lot of people that make this correction before Tara has to make the correction. It should be, the head judge should see this and say, hey, we need everyone spread out on the line, get back on the line and spread out, give everyone space or move closer to the edges. That should be the first thing. The expediter could also see this and spread everyone out a little bit more if they're crowding too much. The competitor that's blocking, so Masa, who's blocking Tara, should recognize that she's blocking Tara and move a little bit over to the left. This shouldn't be something that happens in any division. So bodybuilding, you will get guys walking forward on the line, and that's where you'll hear at the Olympia, you'll hear guys like Steve who's like, get back on the line, and he is like very strict about his lines. He wants everyone on the line, and I think that's great, because what people are doing is they're taking steps forward in bodybuilding. They're taking steps forward on the line so they look a little bit bigger. The closer you are to the judges, the bigger you look. Now, Masa, strategically, she's already the tallest and the biggest competitor on stage. She has the most muscle and she's the tallest. That's usually how it goes. The taller they are, the more muscular you have to be. But she's also stepping forward. So now she makes herself look even bigger. So this is, I understand she's trying to be strategic and kind of block vision of Tara, but she's also making herself look bigger, which is a disadvantage, because you don't want to be the most of anything in bikini. You don't want to be the absolute biggest. You don't want to be the absolute smallest. You don't want to be the absolute leanest. You don't want to be the most dense. You don't want to be any too much. You always want to be floating right in the middle of everything. Right in the middle of everything is what is the best thing. You want to be great. You don't want to be great from anywhere, but you want to be good from everywhere. That's kind of the saying there. So I do think that this was hurting Masa not only in optics by the judges, but also making herself look bigger when she was already the biggest in doing that. And you can look at it, and even when she hits her transition poses, she comes right back in and blocks Tara again. So you could just see like how she sets up and just gets right in Tara's way. I mean, that's crazy. Like, she's blocking her elbow here. If we look here closely, she's blocking even her elbow. Her glutes are covering her arm. That's how far over she is. So this should be the judge. And then if you look at Marie Eve's arm is in front of Tara. So where can Tara go from here? Tara would have to go, she would have to turn her body completely sideways, side shuffle out of there in front, and then set up again and to create the space where she would be seen. She would have to probably come forward 2 feet. And that shouldn't be something that should be done. There's a lot of people who should be stopping that before it happens. The head judge should be seeing this and say, hey, give her more space. But you know what I'm happy about? I'm happy about in the end the head judge saw her, didn't need her to see her wider, right, to see her full body, and still gave her the win. So I'm sure that Tara was a little happy about that, because that has to be frustrating. Imagine being on stage. Imagine being Tara, you're on stage, you're super competitive, you're one of the likely athletes to be qualified for the Olympia. You worked your ass off for 16 weeks, and then 2 girls block you, right, where you're not even able to show your best on stage, and you flew to Tennessee on your own dime, or DC on your own dime. You're a couple $1,000s in here, you're 16 weeks in here on this prep, and then you're like, seriously, you guys are going to block me right now? And it's just a tough position to be in, because you don't really know what to do when you're in that position at that moment if you haven't practiced for this situation. So for all of you out there, the best thing to do in this situation, honestly, is going to be to take that big step forward. The head judge is probably going to see you take that big step forward. If they're not recognizing you're being blocked here, they're going to see you take that big step forward, and they're going to say, hey, everyone get back on the line, spread out, or create some awareness of it somehow. But this isn't something that should happen. Now remember, Masa hasn't been on stage in a couple years, so is this something that she did on accident? It is what it is. It looks a little deliberate to me, because it happened repeatedly. So it's pretty unlikely that if you're moving left to right, that you just so happen to moving only to the left, blocking the other person that's in the middle with you. Like if she was all over the place, it would make sense that she would be in Yulia's way too, in at least one of the turnaround poses. But that's not what happened. It was just Tara, just the person in the middle with her. So yeah, there could be something there, and it just comes down to this step back that she's doing here on this transition. So you can see it. And Tara's really, unless there's really nothing she can do in this position, you know, besides take that step forward. But watch again, it's that step. So she sets up here and then takes a big step to her left and then sits into it, which really moves her over even more. And that's where the problem is. So whether it's something Masa needs to practice because she's just getting back on stage and practice that positioning, but it's definitely something that there's many people who should be fixing this before it gets to Tara. So I'm glad Tara won, especially because of this. Because it would suck for her to get second, and the judges were like, "Yeah, we just didn't see you up there. You know, you're blocked by Masa and Marie, and we didn't see you pretty much at all. We couldn't see you at your best." That'd be very unfortunate. But luckily they got it right. So I'm sure she was like, "Yeah, that's what you guys get," kind of thing. I mean, it has to be frustrating. You're human, right? So let's go ahead and look at the pictures on where this happened, on how the win actually took place, though. And looking at these pictures, and it's funny as I was going through these pictures. So that was the call back. So there's top 4. So look here now at the first call out where there's 8 people in the call out. Masa is blocking Tara in this one as well. Then you look at callback, blocking Tara again, right? You look at all the pictures, all the movement. So Marie Eve has moved over here on this one. Yulia's over here, blocking over again. It's causing the line to be crowded. So now Yulia's getting crowded too when Masa has all this space right here. Right? So it was nonstop. Poor Tara didn't have any light on that backside. So, the stage is big enough to spread them out. Some of the head judge's fault, some of Masa's fault, but we got to catch that. And in here, in this position, this is one where maybe it could have been corrected here, where if she would have taken that step, made it obvious, the head judge might have been like, he would have caught it, that it was happening, and said, hey, move out on the line a little bit, move out on the line, spread it out. But because there was actually space for her to do it here. But as it kept going, she got tighter and tighter and tighter and put herself in that position. So let's go ahead and look at the physiques here and go into who won and why. So obviously, as we talked about before, Tara won. Look at her overall physique. It's really great. I'm really happy to see Tara's physique here. She does need to make some improvements. We're going to go into those right now. But when we look at Tara and we look at her physique, the area of improvement that Tara needs is going to be this upper outer edge of her glute right here. You see how there's like a little gap there of development? That little gap of development, how you're seeing these little kind of divots and separation line of the glutes when she takes movement, when she's in transition, you see that. That's just the upper fullness isn't there. When we look at the ratios, we look at the hips to waist to shoulder ratio, the ratios are there, everything's there, but she needs to fill this out in order to be competitive at that next level. Now, when we look at someone like Yulia, she has that upper outer edge filled out, but her waistline ratios aren't the same. Her V-taper and hourglass shape is not the same as Tara, and that is why she beats her there. That and another reason we'll go into in a second. Now, Tara, looking at her tie-ins, they are really good tie-ins. They're lean. They are full tie-ins. They're bordering on the line of being a crispy tie-in where you have that etching in it, but it's not there yet. It is right before the etching would be considered etching, so it is right at the limit of conditioning. But if you look at the hamstrings, there's no separation. If you look at the adductors, they're not these deep adductors. Everything looks really good there. I mean, she's got great flow to her quads. They're full. They're a little sweeping, but they're not crazy. And from the back, she is the best of everyone based on a few different factors. So let's go ahead and do the other factors of why she wins from the back. So from the back, as we talked about earlier, Yulia has the best density to her glutes out of this group, and also has the upper outer edge probably filled out the most, and she actually has the best tie-ins out of this group. The problem is that they're an etched tie-in and they're a little too much. Now she's posing right where they're not showing as much etching, but when you look at the hamstring and you look at the detail of that hamstring, it is really, really tight. You're seeing the tendon lines of the hamstring. You're seeing the separation lines of the hamstring. Like, look at all the lines that you're seeing and the detail all the way through. Now, the one thing that Yulia has is she's got really good legs. She doesn't have that tapering to her adductors. You just see a nice even flow. You're not getting that deep developed V that Sandy calls a deep V in the tapering. Now, you look at over next to her, Marie Eve. Marie Eve does have more developed adductors. You see how they pop out a lot and Yulia's don't. And then she also has the deep development of that deep V of those adductors because they are so developed. So they're not crazy, they're not bad, they're just there. And when someone doesn't have them and someone does have them, you're going to lose that battle. Now, I will say there's a big difference between Marie Eve and Yulia. Yulia has more dense, more detailed muscle, which typically in bikini doesn't go as well. Marie Eve has that we call pretty muscle. It's got a great glow to it. It's full. It's round. And it's not super dense or detailed. So I would, I personally on a bikini level, I like Marie Eve's physique a little bit more. I would give her the edge. Because she wins from the front in terms of the detail and what I call pretty muscle versus the dense muscle. And I think if Yulia came in with better conditioning, she would honestly, she's probably has the best structure for this in this show. Like structurally, when you look at the shoulders to development of the hips to waist ratios and the development and density of the muscle is probably the best. The problem is that her conditioning is so over the top that it's not setting the right precedent in bikini if she's winning in this conditioning over these girls that are there. So that's where she runs into the problem, is just being overly conditioned. Now, why does Masa lose and why does Masa beat Marie Eve and Yulia in this? Well, Masa, I will say, her conditioning on her glutes, I do think can be just a little bit better. I think it could be a little bit tighter. And I also think that if you look at the area of Masa, she also has this area that needs just a little bit more development on that upper outer edge of the glute, where she's getting that line of separation there in the glute. So it does look really good. It's very full, but I think it can be just a little bit tighter. I think there's just a room for improvement there. Now, if you look at Masa's on her adductors, they're there, but they're not super prominent. They're in a good spot where they're not coming in super thick. There's no deep V. She has very pretty muscle. So I think for her, it's just a tiny bit in that back pose, just a tiny bit more just a tiny bit more development of glutes in this upper area and a tiny bit more condition in those glutes, and she'd be good to go. Now, the other thing that I'm seeing with Masa is I'm seeing her back pose. And if you look at her left side of her back pose, you look at that lat, you see how it's pretty much straight up and down? You're seeing that straight up and down lat. And then you're seeing the right side, there's a little bit more V taper to it. She has, and that's not a symmetry issue in her development. That's just a posing issue. I think that she just has to get posing again. She has to show a little bit of shape from the back pose. And Tara has all the shape in the world from the back pose. You're seeing a really, really good V taper from Tara. You're seeing really good width. You're seeing good V taper from Yulia too. But Masa, her back pose does need more control. You can also see that her rear delt isn't round and prominent like you see on Tara and like you see on Yulia and also like you see on Marie Eve. You see how her rear delt, it kind of goes with the same flow of her arm. So it's like the same, there's not any rounding on the back shoulder. So look at the back shoulder of Tara and then how it creates that big roundness and then goes down and you see that capping. You don't see that on Masa, but it's not because she doesn't have the development. She's not posing to her best. She's not posing. Her lats aren't showing any width. Her rear delts are kind of rounding forward. And I think that her traps are being engaged, which is causing her lats to go up, which is also causing her shoulders to roll forward, which is causing that issue of not showing that beautiful shape that she has. She has really good shape. She has the lats. She has the shoulder width, but she's not displaying it. So if you look at Yulia and you look at Tara, they're both showing that really good shoulders, those really good lats. You look at Marie Eve, again, really great shoulders, showing a little bit of the lats. I do think that Marie Eve, even on her right side especially, is pinching a little bit and is getting a little bit more of that straight up and down physique on her lats. And that could be a reason why Yulia also placed a little higher from her in the back pose. But if you look at the back, Tara destroys this pose from the back. She beats everyone by very, very far margin. It's honestly not even close. And maybe Tara wins because maybe they're not even seeing her from the front because they don't need to. Because she destroys everyone from the back by so far in this position, in this show, by a huge margin. And a lot of it is because of posing, guys. I always tell you guys, come to those posing seminars. I have them once a month at my gym. We have them all over the country. Sandy does them all over the place. Ashley does them all over the place. We did one in Denver last weekend. Go to the posing seminars. This is what makes champions. It's not just development. This is a perfect example of it. Because when you look at the overall muscle, Masa probably has more muscle than all of these girls. Actually, I can guarantee you Masa has more muscle than all these girls. But from the back pose and the upper body, she looks the smallest. Right? Isn't that crazy? So posing, guys. You can't pose too much. Talk to Tiana if you need to get a posing coach. She does posing one-on-one online. Tori does posing one-on-one online. Kimber does posing one-on-one online. Like, get your posing in. All right, now, looking at the front pose. Well, I'm trying to get to the front pose of these girls. All right. As I said earlier, poor Tara here, I'm not getting the best lines, showing her the best lines. I'm really glad the judges got this right, because it would be difficult as a judge, especially if you're over on the left here, trying to see Tara. I mean, I really just can't imagine being a judge over here, trying to see Tara and being blocked by Masa. Like, how do you even see her? Man. So, all right, now, going from the front, I love Yulia's posing here from the front. Look at her quad position. It's facing onward. It's facing the front, but her glutes are still showing nice and round. She's twisting her hips over, and then looking at her shoulders. Really wide shoulders, showing a great V taper. She's sitting into her hip, but not too much. From the front, I will say that Yulia is doing the best at posing from the front. I think that she's knocking it out of the park from the front pose. And I'm talking about posing. I'm not talking about overall physique. The legs of Yulia, look at Yulia's leg detail. So look at how deep that leg detail is. Actually, let's go ahead and scroll in on this. Let's look at Yulia's leg detail, right? Look at how dense and how detailed that leg is all the way down, seeing the quads. And then look at Masa next to her. Look at Tara next to her. And look at Marie-Eve. No one shows even half the amount of detail as Yulia is showing. And when I talk about quads, guys, and I talk about density, this is what I'm talking about, okay? I'm talking about the detail, the hardness of the muscle, the graininess of the muscle. And this, both of these girls, Marie-Eve and Tara, this is what I would call bikini. Pretty muscle, okay, guys? So I'm not always trying to, beat up on people when I talk about their quads, if they have dense quads or whatever. I am pointing out the facts of what judges tell me to look for and what judges say about athletes. And I point it out, and it matter, even if it's my athlete, I'll say, hey, a little bit too much, whatever. But that's the only way to keep these things right and unbiased is by giving an unbiased opinion in it, whether it's my athlete or someone else's. So that's the issue that Yulia has, is just that conditioning of the legs, just a little bit too much in the front and in the back. So once she gets that right, her structure is crazy good. And that's why she does good right now, because her structure is crazy good. And it's good enough to offset that in certain situations. But it's not good enough to offset it in all situations. So she's going to have some fluctuations because of that. Now, once she gets that fixed and once she can get that conditioning just right, where the legs aren't crazy grainy and everything flows right, her structure is crazy good. Crazy, crazy good. In this group, she has the best structure. I'll say that again. It is, in her posing from the front, is a student practicing posing. Everything's perfect here. Now, when we look at Marie-Eve, she is actually hurting herself in this pose. I think that she could be a lot better in this pose. You're seeing her hair on her shoulder, which is shrinking up her shoulders. Remember, this is the center line. This is where the head judge is, right here. So when she's bladed like this and turning to the judge, remember, look at how narrow that she's showing that head judge. She's showing a really narrow stance to the judge. Her whole physique, she's posing like this, and this is what the judge is seeing, and they need to be seeing her more like this. Look at Yulia now. Look at Yulia showing both shoulders squared on to the head judge. And then look at Marie-Eve. This back shoulder is still back. It's not showing her width, and she needs to open that up and show a little bit more width to her front pose. It's going to make her a lot more competitive. And I think a lot of this has to do with angles. If she was over on this side doing that same pose, it would be showing the shoulders and showing the width to the judges, right? But it's not. The judges are over on this side. So she has this judge, and this judge all seeing her pretty small, and this judge a little bit too. The only judge that's seeing her, her shoulder width, is this judge here. So you got to pose as if the mirror is right here, not if the mirror is in front of you. And she's posing right now like the mirror's in front of her. So just a slight, literally 2 inches turned over on her shoulders, and that makes her a lot better here. Maybe it has her beat Yulia. It's still tough. Now, from the front, this is the thing about the posing, guys, and we talked about it and how it can change the quads and change everything. Yulia is killing it with this pose here. Her quads are facing the front. Her glutes are giving nice roundness. So when you have someone like Marie Eve who has this really nice roundness to her hamstring, I don't mind someone posing and showing that full hamstring. But if you're taller and you don't have that roundness to your hamstring, it's just not there, it's probably not a good idea to go fully profile. Like, look at Masa's feet here. They're fully profiled in this positioning. So she's showing the full hamstring. And showing that full hamstring when you don't have the most developed hamstring might not be the smartest strategic idea. So you also are seeing a gap in that area that I talked about, this upper glute, this upper outer edge of the glute needs more roundness. And then you're seeing a straight up and down hamstring. And so there's a lot she can work on with her posing to pose her, one, pose her to be better balanced. Two, the back pose needs some more development on that back pose to show the upper body width. And then I do think that she can benefit from changing her foot position over. And because that hamstring, this position is not helping her. It does make her leg look a little bit thinner than it needs to. And you look at Tara, who's giving a good 45-degree angle. She's going like the 50-50 right in between both of those poses. She's showing a great quad. She's showing a little bit of roundness to her hamstring, and then she's showing the full glute roundness too. So little things like that. Now, what does Tara need to do now that she's in the Olympia? I think that it's a pretty simple thing. Her posing is solid. I don't think there's any issues there. I do think that she would benefit from being a little bit more profile in the waistline. She doesn't have the smallest waistline. When you look at Yulia, you look at Marie Eve and Masa, she has probably the larger rib cage out of all of them. So she might not be able to pose so tall up, which is kind of expanding the ribs a little bit, which will make her waistline look smaller. It could be her peak week. It could be the foods that she's eating. There's a lot of things she can do, but also one thing that she could do right away is I think she can turn her waistline a little bit more profile, maybe an inch more profile, and still hopefully keep her shoulders just as wide open. And that's all she would need there. But from the front, she's good development. She's got pretty muscle. It's just some small tweaks here and there. But I'm really happy she won, especially given the circumstance that she was in. That is a tough circumstance to be in, to be crowded by everyone where you're not showing your best over and over and over again. I mean, there wasn't a time where she wasn't. When she was next to Maz, there wasn't a time where she wasn't blocked. So I'm really happy that happened. But just be aware, those things might happen on stage. Maybe it's blatant. Maybe it's just they're doing it on accident. They don't know they're doing it. But that is something that generally the head judge will catch and say, hey, spread it out, guys. You probably won't see it happen again. Definitely not this year after it happened so obviously once. So anyway, with that, guys, I'll leave you here, and we will go into another show review for that happened this weekend. As always, TeamElitePhysique.com for worldwide online contest prep. Thank you so much for watching.